okay, well, what if someone's crazy? What if, like, some Kim Jong-un guy decides to make a billion of him? Like, if you have this world, this artificial world that you're going to live in, if you're going to live inside this computer, right? I'm assuming there's some sort of an environment that's compatible with the human consciousness. So you're going to create some, you know, real-world multiplayer game where people live inside of it. What's to stop someone like Donald Trump from making a billion Donald Trumps, right? What's to stop you from doing that? From
This is like a big philosophical experiment then, because the question is, why would it matter? If this is all virtual and none of it's real,
right.
This is basically a computer simulation. Why does it matter if in that computer game there's a billion Donald Trumps and a Kim Jong-il?
Right, you know? Or why does it matter if you want to piss on your sex robot and punch it? Like, it's not even a person.
Well, I guess the difference with that is because it's going to change you as a person when you get used to behaving like that. Whereas this uploaded consciousness, well, no human being is around to see it. You've uploaded your consciousness, it's doing its own thing in that world. That world is a parallel universe where nothing matters.
Right.
But I think the idea of uploading your consciousness is very interesting because there's an incredible narcissism in that. There's this idea that people will want to know you after you're gone and your consciousness deserves to be preserved. There isn't enough space in anybody's kind of, you know, how could you deal with a world where the consciousness of every human being who's ever lived is in there? There'd just be too much going on. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, I mean,
you could remember all of your ancestors, you know, how would that affect you if you constantly had the judgment of your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents to deal with as well as your parents and whatever? I don't think that would be very good.
not only that, but who's to say that once they upload your consciousness to some computer, that they won't have some infinitely better version of this software and hardware down the line? Are they going to transfer you again? Are they, and who's going to do that at some point in time?
Exactly.
Or are we going to be able to take your consciousness and continually upgrade it? They're going to have to sign on to some gold group. Like, well, if you sign up to this plan, you know, we upgrade you every 2 years to the newest, latest, greatest software, and you know, you get a wonderful place in heaven. Like, what are we doing?
I know, and who's to say that we were not going to be doing Christmas with people's consciousnesses and editing out, and say, oh, we'll take out your mental illnesses, and then eventually we'll take out your irrationality and your bad movies and your antisocial habits, and then, you know. Yes. So, yeah, the point is, nobody who develops technology can ever control where it goes. And the problem is we're really uncritical about technology because we're so used to science fiction where technology is either really bad or it's wonderful. There's never this grey area in between where it's sometimes really could be used for real good, but has a potentially really dark application if it's used in a society that isn't fair or that has certain ideas about certain individuals. And that's the reality in which we live. Whereas, you know, at the moment we're stuck between, I don't know, the Terminator and, I don't know, some sunny future.
Is there ever a sunny future though? I don't know of any science fiction movie where it looks awesome in the future. It's always it's always like really distraught, dystopian.
Yeah, I can't think of anything. Well, there are. There's quite often in science fiction there's technology that's being used for incredible things. There's just, you know, we've solved that problem. We no longer, we've got completely without killing animals, and that's all fine, and everything's fine, and that's switched, it's no longer a debate. And even things like, you know, like in Blade Runner, yes, the robots there are bad, but they're also perfect and don't have any problems with them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yes, most science fiction is dystopian because it's about our inner fears, about how we can't really control it.
It also seems like one of the things that people enjoy is we enjoy enduring and recovering and overcoming obstacles. And if we get to a point where we remove that, where will the joy come from?
There will be more obstacles. We'll always invent more obstacles. This is the whole thing. That when you live in a country where there is no longer the threat of nuclear war, starvation, and death, there'll be another obstacle. Body dysmorphia or whatever. We'll invent something else. You know what I mean? Like, I think that human beings we are constantly trying to control everything around us, and we're constantly in fear of the chaos around us, and that's why we use technology to try and give us this illusion of control over the world. I mean, there are some things that we really can control, and technology is great at doing that. You know, I'm very grateful for technological advances in birth control. The thing that I haven't been perpetually pregnant for the past 20 years is a great thing, that I can control that part of my body. But ultimately, there are many things that we just can't control, and that technology doesn't solve problems, it just circumvents them. It gives us a kind of easy way out of them. Instead of forcing us to confront the cause of the problem, it's just like plastering over them. And so yeah, I think a lot of the human condition is this struggle between wanting to control everything and having to deal with the fact that ultimately we have no control over anything.
And also implementing our ideas. That's part of the problem, so that people are constantly trying to come up with new, better ways to do things. And then we implement these new, better ways to do things, and then we deal with the repercussions and the consequences of these new changes.
Totally, of the way that we've implemented them.
Yeah.
Yes. And I've got a perfect example of this, which is when I was in Las Vegas doing part of the reporting. I went and interviewed a man who made a sex robot, a very bad sex robot in Las Vegas. And then I went back to my hotel, and they were playing really, really loud music outside the entrance to the hotel to try and get people to come into the casino. And I went up to my room, and there was like a dish next to my bed of different kinds of earplugs, of like silicone earplugs, foam earplugs, wax earplugs, all these solutions to the problem caused by the management there. And they could just turn the music off, but instead they've given you this profusion of solutions.
Which hotel were you at?
I'm not sure.
It was in downtown in LA, and not in LA, in Las Vegas. I can't remember the name. It was a while ago. But it was this ridiculous. It wasn't even a grimy hotel, but it's this, like, a good example of this is also like with our phones. We're all addicted to our phones, so we can't sleep properly. So people are taking melatonin so that they feel sleepy. You think you put your phone down. Do you know what I mean? We've become addicted to different orders of magnitude of technology to solve problems caused by technology.
Do you ever go camping?
I'm not a big camper, but I have been camping, yes, many times.
The interesting thing about camping is if you do it for enough days, you realize that your brain, when it gets dark out, you start preparing to sleep. And normally, like 8 o'clock at night, I'm wide awake. I'm wide awake for 7 hours. But when I'm camping, at 8 o'clock, it's like, well, it's easy. You sit around the campfire, talk a little bit, and get ready to go to sleep. That's just what happens. That's your natural cycle. Circumstance that.
I mean, if you look at the effect of technology on human beings, it doesn't have to be something fancy as a perfect sex robot. Like artificial intelligence change human society, human beings, the way we kept 150 years ago, whenever we were. We don't have to go through how much we have changed because of that. It's incredible. But that's the other thing. The things that really have potential radical change in human society, behaviour, human biology, they don't have to be very fancy and high tech. They don't have to be
there's one even more insidious aspect of life. It's disconnected us from the present. One of the things that you realize when you go camping, there's no lights. Oh my God, we're in space. Like you see all the stars. When you go, like, I went to the Camp Observatory in Hawaii. Well, I've been a few times where I went with no moon, and the sky was clear, and it was stunning. And to this day, I still have to close my eyes sometimes to try to remember what it was like, because you can see the whole Milky Way. You can see everything. The Camp Observatory is very high on the Big Island, and it's above the clouds. And in fact, when we were driving there, it was cloudy, and I was like, damn, this is gonna suck. We're gonna get all the way up there, we can't see anything because of these clouds. But then you pop through the clouds, and then you get to the observatory, and it is probably days. Without a history telescope, just the amount of stars that you see, it's so stunning. It changes your relationship to life and to this experience that we're having here on Earth. We don't see these stars. We have street lights, we look at our phone, we're watching TV. We have this bizarre idea of what life is. But then when you're there and there's nothing but the stars and oh no, this is an organic spaceship traveling through space on this ball. And I thought this was everything. But if you see all those stars, it humbles you in a way that our ancestors were humbled. Why they're so obsessed with the constellations, why they're so obsessed with the zodiac signs, and all the different ways that they would study all the lights in the sky and try to figure out what kind of relationship we had with them.
Golfers are in Augusta, and DraftKings, America's top-rated sportsbook app, is putting you in the This episode is brought to you by Michelob Ultra Organic Seltzer. Crisp, cool, with natural fruit flavors, Michelob Ultra Organic Seltzer strives for realness. It's USDA certified organic, with no sugar, no carbs, and only 80 calories. So the only thing touching your taste buds is organic, refreshing, and delicious. Michelob Ultra Organic Seltzer, as real as it tastes.
How do those lights?
Yeah, absolutely. We've lost the context and the perspective on our existence that we need, really. But then again, also, could we really function if we were constantly aware of how, even to the test it's small, I guess it would liberate us from being so obsessed with gazing at our own navels.
I think it would probably be humbling in a way that would eliminate a lot of unnecessary movement. I think there's a lot of dumb shit that we do that is connected to this sort of dull perception of our place in the universe. And I think if we can see it, and it can humble us the way it humbles the Mayans and all the other civilizations that were constantly fixated on the celestial gods and all the different lights in the skies. I think it would be better for us. But I think my fear is that all of this is like, and again, this is looking at it outside of a human being. All of this is leading us towards this complete total immersion in technology. And one of the best ways to get us to not think about our position in this vast infinite universe is that we don't see it. What's the best way to not see it? Technology. Blind you, literally blind you to the most spectacular vision the world's ever known. The most spectacular vision of the heavens is the sky, the stars, the Milky Way, all the galaxies that are visible to the naked eye. That's what gives you so much wonder and creates so many myths of what's going on up there. Well, the best way to eliminate that and have us fixated totally on ourselves, become self-centered, is to blind us to it. And that's what we've done. We've done that with lights.
So I think it's also, all of this is also to do with capitalism. And that capitalism depends on us all feeling incomplete and like the next big thing. So we need the technology to solve this problem. I will be fine. I will be happy if I achieve this thing, or if I fall into the solution. And there's no money to be made saying, hey, what you really need to do is get a proper night's sleep. Right. Go and do some exercise, but you don't need anything fancy to do some exercise. Eat a little less if you're trying to lose weight, but all you need to do is eat a little less. There's no money to be made in that way. So we are robbed of our context because capitalism depends on us thinking that we can control everything and be a kind of self-determined beings if we just buy the next thing and are always focused on our own project and what we're going to do next to achieve the goal we want. There's no money to be made in telling people everything as it is right now is fine and good and you should just appreciate it.
Right,
we don't do that.
You're absolutely right, but that's what we were talking about earlier when I was saying that I feel like materialism, which is one of the great plagues of humanity, this desire for shiny things that are supposedly going to make us happy, is also fueling technology. Because in order to keep up with the human desire for these things, we're constantly creating newer and better things. So all of our ridiculous instincts to acquire these things are literally fueling the innovation of technology.
But again, I would say, I agree with you, but again, I would say, like, we have the power to say, I don't need these earplugs, I'm just going to turn the music down. Or I don't want this sex robot, I'm just going to deal with, ultimately, we have the power of being consumers, and the consumer has the power to not want something. And that's where real power lies, in being in control of your desires and not just being led along by someone saying, you need this, you need this. You know, having the power to say, I don't think that I do need this, and I'm fine just as I am.
I agree with you, but I don't think people are going to say that. I think they're going to give right in. I don't think anybody's moving to a log cabin in the woods either. I think you're like 1 out of a million. 1 out of a million, and we look at those people like they figured it out.
You don't have to move to a log cabin, though. You just need to say, you know, I've got a house that suits my purposes, and it's fine, and I'm happy with it, and my life is good. I don't, you know, I don't care if people look at what car I've got and judge me on it. Those people aren't worthwhile. I mean, I'm not saying that you give up all your possessions and become a hippie. I quite like having stuff, but I reached a point in my life where, you know, I've got a job that I love, and I have 2 kids, I have a lovely family, and I am very, very aware of feeling like I'm there, and I have everything that I want. And other possessions, they might be nice, but actually, I feel fulfilled. But then when you feel fulfilled, you're aware of how much the world is constantly trying to tell us that you'll only be fulfilled when you've got this, or when you've done this.
But I would submit that you are a very intelligent, introspective person, and I think that's rare. I don't think a lot of people feel very fulfilled. A lot of people...
We have a different view of human nature. I think most human beings are really good people who just want to get along, and that they're...
Oh, I agree with that. I agree with that.
But what don't you agree with?
Well, I agree most human beings are really good people that want to get along, but I think they will give in to the siren song of materialism and technology and all these different things, because I don't think they're as introspective as you are. You're looking at it and you're like, this is perfect. I've got this. I don't need any more. This is fine. I realize all the things that are fucking up my life and fucking up society, and I'm not going to give in to that. But you're an author. You're someone who thinks all the
thinking
time.
of retiring,
you spend hours every day.
That's what we need. We need to encourage critical thinking. There isn't really enough of that. And at the moment, like, particularly in the way that we communicate now, which is about people being angry and then other people being angry and then other people enjoying watching the two sides fight, the skill of being able to think critically and to enjoy the grey area where both sides are kind of right here. I think that we're going to move away from this era because it's, you know, I don't think we're going to get more and more polarized, because there's only so far that we can all go without all killing each other, basically.
Yeah, we're pretty far polarized.
We're pretty far apart, and you know, and in the UK as well, you know. But eventually, I think when we are no longer enjoying being spectators or participants in this sort of violent debate, you know, we'll be looking. We'll be able to look at the grey area and look at what's valuable in that, and we need to encourage critical thinking and not just not taking sides, you know?
I agree with you 100%, and I hope that, this is where it gets ironic, because I feel like conversations like this are what help people, because it resonates, what you're saying resonates with people. They hear your words and they go, she's right, I'm going to adjust, I'm going to adjust the way I think. But it's technology that's got us to this position in the first place. We're more polarized now with more connection than we've ever had before. We have more connection with each other than ever before. But the problem is that connection is very crude. It's very clunky. And through text,
the connection.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's through texting and this weird thing we're doing with Twitter and Instagram. It's like we're more connected, but we're more connected in a way that we don't feel it. And so we're more polarized.
What really, the big difference now is that, you know, a friend of mine said to me, he's totally right, and it's something that I've discovered over the past 5-10 years, that it's not a superpower. The superpower is to listen, to really listen to what people are actually saying, and not what you want them to say or how you know, to really, really properly listen, because people are just not listening to people anymore. And I have, you know, in one respect, I write books and I write really long articles, and when I do those interviews with people, I interview them for a long time and I transcribe it all myself. I don't use a computer or pay anyone else to do it, and it's so dull and I hate it, but that's where I really understand what people are saying, and that's where I get all the ideas for structure. And then I have another part of my work that I do is I present a radio show, which is completely a different thing, where I'm interviewing people for like 6 or 7 minutes, and I'm learning the skill of that. And part of the skill of when you're doing really short interviews, you're meant to kind of ask questions that force people into saying things or trap people in a way. And the performance is you asking the question rather than you listening to the answer and thinking, okay, what would be an interesting question to ask next? And that is much more common. I mean, I love my radio show. I'm not saying my radio show is like that, but I'm saying I'm learning how to deal with a world where that's what's traditionally done. Is the start of interviewing is a kind of a dance that you do with people instead of asking a question where you think the answer might be interesting and then really listening to the answer. People don't really do that anymore. And if they did, you know this more than anyone else, the power of giving people proper time and really, really listening and responding. Because in the world that we're living in now, people feel like they don't have time for that.
100%. And I think everything you're saying is why podcasts are so popular today.
Yes, people are hungry for it.
Yes, particularly a podcast like this where there's very few people involved. It's basically just you and me and my producer Jamie's over here working the controls. That's it. And because of that, we can explore these ideas in long form. And what I've learned over the years is to listen and to like the whole concept of having a conversation with a person, trying to think the way they think. Don't try to be right. Don't try to like get them in a gotcha. I don't ever try to do that. I try to figure out what you're thinking, and then I'll present you maybe something that's contrary or controversial, or I just want to see how you react, and I want to feel the way your brain works, and I want to let you breathe. I want to give you room to explore these ideas and thoughts, and when people listen, they're essentially allowing you to think for them in a way. They're like, you're talking, and they're like, oh, Jay's got some really good points. Like, it's working in their brain, like, okay. And you don't get that in a short form.
No, you don't. And the popularity of your podcast shows that people really want that. They want to be able to really explode ideas and hear the different paths that you can take through an idea.
Yeah.
Whereas most news journalism is about forcing news lines out of people, like getting this politician to say that they fucked up, or getting this celebrity to admit that they did whatever, or managing to skewer someone into saying something or admitting something, and it's the opposite of what I do. It's the opposite of what you do. But most people assume that's what the public wants, is these new lines, or have you heard this has happened, that's happened. Whereas actually, I think people are really hungry to hear properly, nuanced debates where different sides of things are weighed up, and people are not kind of, sparring.
Yeah, they want to hear people explore ideas. That's what they really want to hear. And they want to hear people explore ideas honestly, where they're not manipulating people's words and not playing weird games. They're just trying to find out how each other views things.
And I hope there's an
timer.
That, as somebody who generally does,
we sent a drone to scout it.
I write like 5,000 words, they take a long time to write. I write books, I hope that people are going to see the value of that. That kind of stuff takes and energy. Doing this quick interview where you're really clever and you've managed to get someone to say something or admit something that you haven't to anyone else. But that's where the real meal is. It's in the really good stuff where people are actually
Have you thought about doing a podcast?
I'd love to do a podcast. I did a podcast documentary, a kind of true crime thing, where I kind of did a story as a podcast. It was a story about this Dutch fertility doctor who was really successful in the 1980s.
We can handle some
and it transpired
The Supreme Leader has an army.
using his own sperm to inseminate his patients, and there are now like 17 Dutch kids who look like him who are trying to get justice.
I heard about that. Yeah, I heard about that story.
Hey,
I did that, but then I would. Look, I mean, a podcast like this where I'm sitting and interviewing people, I think I'd probably enjoy that too.
You would be great at it. You really should do it. You would be fantastic at it. I really think that's. I mean, you're built for it.
Endorsement. I would love to do it. I guess it's all about picking the right people, isn't it? I mean, how do you choose who comes on your show?
It just has to be interesting. That's all I do. Luckily, there's no one telling me who to have on. So I just find people's books interesting, or I find the subject matter interesting, or I'll watch a video interview with them with someone else. Like, oh, I like the way they think, and I just want to talk to them. That's it. That's the only motivation. And occasionally some of them are famous. Like there's some really interesting famous people. But that's it. Or maybe an artist that I really enjoy, or whatever it is, with an author I really enjoy their work. I just like to talk to people that I'm interested in, and that's my compass. Like,
have you ever asked to speak to somebody and it's turned out they're not that interesting?
Yeah, I've had a few of those. I don't need to mention any names. Yeah, I've trudged through them.
Question where I'm trying to get a news line out of you.
Yeah. I don't want to be mean. Yeah, there's some that I thought were going to be interesting, and it just turned out to be sad. It was depressing, and
But I think you're lucky in that you have a reason to have a podcast, which is that you're a comedian. You do your ultimate fighting thing. You have you as a brand. And for me, the problem that I've had as a journalist my whole life is that people always say, like, what kind of journalist are you? And I'm a journalist who, like, I look at stuff I find interesting. Whereas most other journalists, they're like, I'm an environmental journalist, or I write about women's issues, or I'm a political specialist. And I'm like you, like, I want to do whatever interests me, but I haven't been given the same opportunities to do it because I don't have that other thing, which is I'm a comedian, so you should come along with me in what I think, because,
Yeah, but you're a respected broadcaster. Like, people know who you are. You're an author, a published author. I think if you build it, they will come. I really do. I really think you should do it.
Okay, well, if you say so, then I've got to, really.
Please do it. Let's talk about vegan meat. I want to talk more about that. I've always found the vegan substitutes to be very disgusting and weird, because this is the thing that you don't like, right? You don't like the fact that people are eating meat. So I understand you're trying to indoctrinate people by, look, you don't have to eat meat. You could have this fake burger that's actually terrible for you. Actually worse for you than real beef, but filled with all these disgusting processed oils that mimic the taste of beef in some strange way. So why don't you have that? I've always found that to be so weird, because I feel like when you do veganism correctly, it's great to have vegetable dishes that taste good, but shouldn't they be fucking vegetables? Like, why are you tricking yourself? Like, what do we get? Like, if you're a cannibal, and you're like, can we all agree cannibalism is bad? Yes, we can. Okay, so let's have fake babies that you can eat. Like, we would never agree to that, right? But yet we'll agree to these fake burgers. That's like, we all know what a burger is. It's ground up meat. So you have a fake burger? Like, why are we doing that? Why can't you eat vegetables? Why do we have to play these weird mental gymnastic games?
The people who make this stuff, so there's two things. There's plant-based meat, which is meat substitutes, clever meat substitutes made not from animals. And then there's the stuff that I look at a lot in the book, which is meat that is grown from cells that are cloned in a lab, or grown in a lab. So with both of them, they all come down to a particular view of human nature, which is that human beings are incapable of change, that human beings should be eating less meat because it's bad for our bodies, it's bad for the planet, it's a contributor to carbon emissions, antibiotic resistance, water pollution, water wastage, land wastage, it's a disaster, zoonotic diseases, so diseases that jump from animals into humans, like swine flu, coronavirus, to animal agriculture. So we have to stop eating so much meat. But particularly the people who make this stuff think human beings are not going to change, so we have to give them what they want. We have to give them what they want. So we have to make a burger that looks like a burger, because the whole premise behind all of this is that the kind of ethical campaign of animal rights has failed. You can see pictures of animals in abattoirs, and yet people still eat them. Like they shut their eyes when they open their mouth. They just don't want to see it. They know it's cruel, but they like it because it's tasty. And so we've got to give them something that looks the same and tastes the same and isn't the same. And that's how the kind of animal rights campaign works, not with arguments, not with saying we should just like vegetables. And so it's quite a thin view of human nature, which is, we're never going to win people over with arguments. We're going to give them something, and yeah, maybe very unhealthy. I mean, some of the plant-based meat that's being made now is very convincing, and but it's ultra-processed food, and
usually eating French fries and drinking soda, and there's a lot of contributing factors to them being unhealthy.
But there are some things you can pull out, like, you know, colon cancer is really connected to red meat. There are different, you know, when you talk about meat being bad for you, that's a big umbrella. And yes, obesity is caused by a lot of different things. But overconsumption of large quantities of meat is connected to heart disease and cancer.
This field bunker was here. All the old signal detectors got destroyed.
That's the way it's connected.
Good thing
There's
you
no
brought
one
yours.
who's shown a study, people who eat grass-fed, grass-finished beef and organic vegetables only over a period of X years, what are the results? Because I guarantee you, it would be healthy humans. That's
look at societies where people don't eat, like where people generally, I mean, it's ideological, but when you look at societies where traditionally there is not a dairy culture or a beef culture, how those societies have changed when it's become fashionable to have dairy in those cultures, and what kind of diseases have sprung up from that. I would need to go and look at the evidence base, but I do think there's quite a well-established link between overconsumption, and I mean overconsumption of meat, so like eating it every day, several times a day.
I don't think there is. I've looked into it pretty deeply. Yeah, the real issue is human beings have eaten meat since we were human beings. We've always eaten meat. This idea that all of a sudden meat is bad for you. Meat is protein and water and amino acids. It's not bad for you. What's bad for you is, first of all, processed sugar and nasty carbohydrates and those fake burgers. All that shit's terrible for you. What's bad for you is hydrogenated vegetable oils and all the sugars.
Yeah, but I would say what's bad for you is the overconsumption of anything. So yeah, human beings have eaten meat since the beginning of time, and you would kill one animal and then live off that one animal for a really, really long time, and then maybe go quite a few days without getting another kill straight away. It's greediness and the overconsumption of it that's bad for you.
Well, obesity, for sure, is bad for you. So the overconsumption of anything, eating too many calories, more than your body's burning off, and you're obese. Obviously, that's terrible for you. But most animals are edible. So when human beings were evolving, we ate whatever we could get a hold of. Most plants are inedible. And when you're running around trying to figure out what you can eat and what you can't eat, the animals that survived are the ones that ate other animals. If you just run around, unless you're an animal like a cow that figures out, well, I'm just going to stick to grass, because grass seems to work out for me. What happens when we feed cows things that aren't grass? They get really sick. And it's one of the problems with, if you ever watch any of those documentaries on how they raise cattle to make them fat, and you see, oh, it's horrific what happens to their stomachs and their bodies. And when you see a well-marbled piece of meat that people think is delicious, dying animal. If that animal's dying, that's why it's so fat. That's not normal. This juicy steak is about marbles. You made that thing sick. That poor animal's sick. And now you're eating a sick animal. That's...
Well, there's two things I'd say to that, and one is, yes, I mean, the problem is industrial agriculture.
Yes.
You know, producing a factory production line of animals, because we are all eating meat so much, it is unsustainable. The only way to produce it, and produce it cheaply enough, is to produce it in that way. And, you know, it's disgusting. I saw some of these farms from the outside as part of my research for it, and it's disgusting and awful. You know, there's the Harris Ranch that's in between LA and San Francisco. The cow sheds, it's like a giant concentration camp of cows. It's horrific and it's horrific. But then I think you also have to be careful talking about it being a natural on the basis of the fact that it's cavemen and that sort of thing. It's natural, but that doesn't mean to say that's a reason why we should do it. And I'm talking to someone who is still a carnivore now, even though I wrote this book where I set out the argument for why eating meat and regularly going out to the sustainable. So I like the way it works. meat because we really like it. It's tasty. It's part of our culture. It's something that we don't want to let go of. And that's why people are going to all these great lengths to give us these kind of substitutes. Because it's such a big part of who we are. But it's difficult to make an argument that it's right for us to eat it because it's natural, because it's good for us. Because those arguments, I think, don't necessarily stand up. But it's okay to say, I want to do.
I think the argument that it's right to eat meat is a very tough argument to make. I think 100% it's disgusting, and it shows the worst aspects of human nature that we have seen. That the best way to feed people in mass is to stuff these animals into these disgusting factories and these huge warehouses and have them live in their own shit, like you've seen pigs and cows and chickens and all these animals are treated this way. I don't think that is the only way to raise animals. And if you talk to people that specialize in regenerative agriculture, they can not only can they not have this massive carbon emission, but they can generate carbon neutral farms. There's a guy named JuWan30's who runs a farm called Polyface Farms that he speaks to people all over the world about this particular style of regenerative farming and about letting these animals live like they would naturally, only eating grass. He sets up these enormous chicken coops and they're mobile, where these chicken coops, he moves them all throughout the farm so these chickens can go out and free range and then come back in. And he loses a tremendous amount of chickens to natural predators like hogs,
encrypt the information quickly.
along those lines. But his take on things is that it's completely immoral what human beings have done in the name of profit as far as raising animals, and that it should have never been done, and that is the main argument against animal agriculture, is factory farming.
Yes, but I would say that even though that sounds great, and it is great, there is not enough land on planet Earth for all the meat that we're currently eating to be produced that way, particularly as the population is increasing. It is true. I think we need like 5 other planets. For everybody to continue eating meat at the level that we're eating it now, the population of the Earth is going to be, 50% again what it is now by 2050.
Unless they factory farm the way they're farming it right now.
There is no way that we could meet the demands of all of those people eating meat, particularly if there's going to be 9 billion people on the planet by 2050, with the land that we have now.
So you're talking about an expansion of population, but with the current population that we have right now, is it sustainable to live in a way where they don't have to factory farm?
I think it is sustainable if we eat less meat. That's the thing. If we don't eat it twice a day, 7 days a week. If we eat it twice a week.
I think this is a complex issue. But I think we both agree that, first of all, factory farming is it's horrific, and I think it's one of the worst things that human beings do in terms of not just our impact on the world itself, but also how we feel about what we do. There's something that you know that you're eating something that was tortured most of its life, and you do it anyway just because it's delicious. How do you respect yourself? Like, how do you feel about yourself? I feel very bad about us. And in America, we have these ag-gag laws that are even more disturbing, where, say, if you work in a factory farm and you find the conditions to be horrific and you film it and take photographs of it, you go to jail. They'll arrest you. They'll lock you up for showing horrific actions that have been discussed. Most of the people that are eating that food, which is really crazy.
Well, I mean, most people when they eat food, they know kind of theoretically that it is produced generally through a lot of cruelty, but they just push it out of their minds.
Yeah.
You can't be thinking about that on a daily basis. If we're agreeing that most people are good people, they don't want to feel like they're complicit in the torture of animals on a daily basis. But that is what's going on at the moment, really. And even the ones that live a good life, they still have to be killed for us to eat them.
Well, they don't live forever if you don't kill them. You don't kill them. They become fairies.
Well, you know, it's not very nice to be killed.
No, it's not. But
Allowed
if
to
they do
die.
it effectively and humanely, it's instantaneous. When you do that raw to the brain, it really is instantaneous. It's a very messy, complicated argument, though, right? Is it okay for human beings to kill their animals?
Yes.
You know,
And for me, what's interesting is like, I am on an intellectual level. I buy the arguments. I totally agree with the arguments for not eating meat. I wrote all about all of this. And that's why I was a kind of interesting person to go and look into this world of, okay, so if you could grow meat without any animal dying, and I ate a chicken nugget that came from a chicken called Ian who's still alive. So I ate a piece of meat from an animal that's still alive. So I'm the kind of dream target market of this stuff because
how vile was it?
It was really bad, and bad in a way that you don't really expect because it tasted like chicken because it wasn't. But it's chicken cells that have been grown in a lab and they're in a kind of mass, a mushy mass. So it wasn't like it didn't have the texture of meat at all. It didn't have fibers in it. So it wasn't a cut of meat. And when you eat meat, but the texture's not quite right, something's not quite right, you have a kind of primal response where your brain is saying, spit this out.
Yeah.
So I had that, but then I had all these PR people looking around me going, it tastes like chicken, doesn't it? And I went, yeah, it tastes like chicken.
Chicken that has cancer.
Yeah, we say that chicken has been mushed up and stepped on and so it's not ready yet, but ultimately these people are thinking they will be able to grow a cut of meat and they will be able to grow a steak, a nutritious steak.
Yeah.
But at the moment, really, they can grow.
I don't think the argument is just a taste argument. I think the argument is a health argument because I think there are someone in the neighborhood of a high 80% of people that try veganism and quit. And a lot of them, I've had a bunch of them on my podcast that talk about it. Miley Cyrus is one, Mike Tyson is another. They just give up because they don't feel good. And immediately upon eating meat, they start feeling better again. Some of them become pescatarian. Some people don't have problems with fish because they don't have eyelashes and they don't really look like us. It's like if you're going to kill something, kill them.
But the thing is, the moral argument against eating fish is even greater.
Yes, it is.
Overfishing,
Yeah.
we're doing genocide in the oceans with the fish.
And the way we do it is horrific. Yeah,
it is really horrific. And we can't farm fish in the same way. We can't do the awful things that we're doing on factory farms without it. We can't really do that with fish because they die. And most fish don't really like living in those conditions, and they just don't grow. But yeah, it's terrible. But yeah, no. The thing about meat is it's a very efficient way of getting that nutrition into your body. You can't get that nutrition. I'm not a vegan. I'm not a vegan at all.
No, I know you're right. I have friends that are vegan that do it right. It can be done. I just don't think it's optimal. I don't believe it's optimal.
Yeah, we haven't worked out how to do it yet. But it is possible, and it's not like the only way to get adequate nutrition is to have a hamburger or whatever.
Sorry, or a hamburger.
Yeah.
I think the argument for this vegan meat, creating meat in a lab, is really the future. And I think they're going to be able to do it. The question is if they're going to be able to do it, as you're saying, where it has the texture of an animal that's been, like, animals that taste good are animals that are healthy. To me, like, I enjoy grass-fed animals. And I enjoy particularly wild game. Because wild animals, they live a wild life, they taste better. There's more chew to it. It's like, there's more substance to it. If they can figure out how to do that in the lab, that's going to be fascinating. If they can figure it out.
That's a difficult thing to do because the reason why the texture is different is because those animals exercise muscle. And, you're not going to be exercising those little things in your lab, even if you're growing it. So that is a really, really tricky thing to do. And the other thing is that food is really an intimate experience. Eating is a very intimate experience, and people don't forgive when, if you eat something that's disgusting, you don't try it again.
Right.
And so the issue with this is whether or not the first products that come onto the market are going to be good. If they're not,
those real ethical concerns with creating a headless animal that you use electrical muscular stimulation to keep active, and you develop muscles through that, like, that's going to freak people out even more. But don't worry, it can't be alive. It's never been alive. So we created this thing with, like, a, you know, that's bolted into this machine where you're shocking it constantly in order to keep the muscle strong, and then you eat it. But it's never had a head. It's never going to have a head, so it can't really experience pain.
Very interesting, because the whole, I hadn't thought about it, but you're quite right. It's like the whole appeal of this stuff is this is meat not from animals, but if you have to make it behave a little bit like an animal so that it has the right texture, where does that work in terms of the philosophical approach, the ethics of this? If it's not an animal, then it's moving like an animal.
Take them out before they damage the Quinjet. The only way out of this place. Come on.
Yeah, don't you think that's where it's going to go? Like if somebody wants a bone-in ribeye, you're like, oh, well, there's a way, and they just decide to create an artificial cow and clone the whole thing with sans head, and then you will actually have a bone-in ribeye from an animal that you can ethically eat because it never really had a chance to be alive. Just a cow.
I think we're much more likely to have 3D printed. Exactly like that. It's a game that you like so much because it's in the world. I think that's more likely than a headless cow on a treadmill.
Bob, the beach scientist, comes up with some headless animal that tastes way better. Machines alone is. He's like, look, I understand what you're saying. This isn't even an animal. This is a headless cow. It's attached to a bunch of wall sockets. We just charge that fucker up every day. It's got because it's been electrically shocked constantly, and it's trying to relax the muscles.
I mean, what if you're an animal is quite an inefficient conveyor of calories, because animals are always growing fresh, they also flap their wings and they peck and they run around, so they burn the calories they take in. And so then the scientists are running an equation for every 1 calorie that you eat from beef, it's taken 36 calories. For the cow has had to ingest 36 calories to produce 1 calorie of beef. So I think the argument that you make the meat and then you get the meat to exercise will kind of undermine that idea of it being more calorie efficient, because the meat will be spending calories by moving around.
Maybe, but if it doesn't have a head. Yeah, it's like, how are we going to sustain this thing? I'm sure